What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now, Back to the Past. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about Concord returning yet again. The old Palpatine has somehow returned thing has definitely come back. So pretty interesting what's going on here. I want to go over just kind of the basic news, and I kind of want to just talk about my opinion because, this is a technical old game in terms of Podcast Now, Back to the Past, and it's a game that, much like everything I talk about with game preservation, look, the game was rather terrible. The game just flat out didn't work. It had so much stacked against it. It made pretty much every mistake in the book. You really have to, I think, learn from these mistakes. I don't think you shy away from it. I think that you shine a light on it and you say Concord was a miserable failure and, everything went wrong and it was many people's fault, and you can even blame specific people, and we will never do this again. That's what you kind of hope to hear from PlayStation, and just you don't want to see it repeated. But at the same time, do we need the game to die? That's where I would have a little bit of pushback. And I think I've actually said this before. Concord physically on PS5 actually went up in price. I think it was being sold initially for $40. After it was nuked offline, 2 weeks in, the game actually is going for, or at least at the time, it was going for like $100+ on third-party, retail sites. And in that way, it's kind of almost a collector's item. It's kind of just this relic of, you buy it and you spend that much money and you can't actually play it. There's nothing there to actually play. But it kind of becomes special in that way. But look, you can't actually get into this thing. And now from this, what we're going to talk about, you can. But that's the point. To me is, I think we should be allowed to keep these games around. And I'm happy with that preservation angle. I'm happy that work is being done to, I guess, keep the game around, more like bring the game back and at least make it playable in some way. Right now, it's in a very buggy, kind of messy state. It is something you can actually go through and I believe play a full match of the game. And that's definitely impressive. I think you can say that about these, engineers and tech people that we're going to talk about. Definitely impressive, but also I think cool, because I think we can learn from the failures of something like this, but also to allow it to continue on. And there can be jokes here. For it to continue on for the 12 people that care, that is important. And it's a joke. It's maybe not a joke because, of course, nobody played this game, and that was obviously a big problem. How many people are going to take advantage of this when all's said and done? Probably under 1,000, But again, for that group of people, it is rather special, or it's just a cool thing. So, okay, well, what are we talking about? Coming from the Game Post, Sony's Concord is playable again thanks to fan-made custom servers. So they go over the history of Concord. I don't think we really need to do that. Failure, comes out, dies a couple weeks in, $40 game, many mistakes, right? So they say, behind the scenes, though, a small group of developers in the community has been working on a way to bring Concord back in some form. After months of reverse engineering and server work, that effort has now hit a major milestone. Concord is running again on custom servers, and full matches are playable. This new progress comes from a community project led by the developers known as Red, Open_Wizard, and GWOG. In an announcement posted in the project's Discord server, Red shared that Concord is officially running through custom servers. This is thanks to a full rebuild of the game's backend API by OpenWizard, a major amount of reverse engineering work on Concord and its systems by Red, and additional help from GWOG, who assisted in fixing several major issues along the way. The team managed to get main parts of the game working, main menu, character loading, matchmaking, and even a full Clash Point match. Along with the announcement, they posted 2 gameplay videos showing the game fully booting and running on their recreated servers. Now, by the way, just to interject, you can't actually watch those. They were posted on YouTube, and I think they were copyright striked, taken down. I don't know who took it down, if it was them or if it was maybe a PlayStation kind of side to things, but you'd have to, I think, go specifically on their servers in order to see that. It was up, but it wasn't up, I think, for all that long. And again, they say it's still early and it's still buggy. There was a statement posted, from their Discord, which is pretty much everything we just read. And basically, they're going to be doing playtests. So they say, if anyone here wants to join these playtests, let me know. And then they, of course, credit everyone that worked on it. So it's getting there. It's still a mess, and it's going to take some time. I saw people, because this is being spread around, I'd say pretty substantially. I think because I think the thing is, even though you might not actually play it, because again, nobody played it in the first place, it's still an interesting concept. You can still talk about the news or consume the news, but not actually play the product. And I think that's what's going to end up happening happening. Most people are not going to touch this, but again, it's cool, I think, for those that want to try it out, that want to kind of be a part of it. But I think the number one question that I was seeing even on social media that I don't necessarily have an answer for, I just kind of wanted to float out there. Of course, there's the tech stuff that I'll just never be able to understand. I'm not from that world, but like the game was only out for like 2 weeks, and I guess maybe if you have it physically, you can rip some files. Like, I just wonder, and not that I need like a super in-depth explanation, but I just wonder like how they did it, because the game, in terms of it being out there and whatever, engineers and tech people can do to it, it was only up for like 2 weeks, and who was really caring enough to like take that info during that time, right? Because they announced it, and man, that thing shut off faster than a blink of an eye. So, I think it's just impressive, not even for, really everything we just talked about. I mean, that's an add-on. I think it's actually more impressive for this beyond anything else, that they even managed to do it with like what info, or what files, what anything did they have. I think that's the most impressive thing, is how did they actually manage to recreate it. Now, it took a while, and it's still not done, so it's going to take even more, but I think that's seriously impressive. So I just think it's overall a pretty cool story. Again, I do think we should be able to look at this game and like call it out. You speak with your actions, and I think that part was actually read loud and clear, and I think that's important. It's important to actually do that with games that are just non-inspiring. This game has like one of the worst, I would say, to me, okay, because I actually think the gameplay itself is fine, and I played the open alpha or open beta, whatever they did right before the game came out. I thought like functionally fine. I even would say I had a little bit of fun. I would even go so far to say that. But the one thing that really stood out to me was just the characters, just so lazy in their design. There was nothing that it just, I don't know, felt very bland. No like spark to any of them. You couldn't look to any of them and say, oh yeah, that's like an amazing like design thing. It just felt very run of the mill, and it was $40, and of course, it really, I think, just this was important to have for PlayStation. It actually was very important this thing came out, because I really think you needed a game to be the absolute failure that this one was, and a bigger failure than any game I think has almost ever been for PlayStation. You needed that, because you sometimes need wake-up calls in life, right? And this was was towards the end where you knew that PlayStation was making a lot of mistakes with this stuff, and you knew like the Jim Ryan stuff, you knew the Bungie stuff was hurting and all that jazz, but I think you really needed, like Suicide Squad was like the ultimate, like, please for the love of God, wake up, WB, and ultimately I think they still have not woken up from that dream. But PlayStation, I feel like it definitely like punched them square in the face, where it's like, all right, we get it, but I think you need something like this in order to get that response. Otherwise, you might never get the response. So it was important. It kind of needed to happen. It's kind of a relic now, which is kind of cool, and it also might just be coming back, I think, for free. So the $40 or paying hundreds of dollars now to get it physically, you won't have to do that. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.